Hello and welcome. My name is Christina and I'm the Education Coordinator with the DuPage County Farm Bureau. If this is your first time joining us, we're super excited to have you here. And if you've been following along with our lessons, welcome back. I have a special topic for you today, all about specialty crops. Now, before we get there, I want you to answer the question for me. What is a crop? All right, so crops are plants that are cultivated or grown typically for food or for other uses. So specialty crops are actually a kind of category of crops, and they include fruits, vegetables, tree nuts, horticultural, and nursery crops. So those are things like flowers and shrubs and trees. Now, to understand the specialty crops in Illinois, we first need to look at our state and our growing conditions. So, Illinois has really flat, fertile soil and land. And our soil is so fertile because glaciers moved across Illinois during the Ice Age, and they first flattened the land, but they also deposited minerals as they moved through. So, this made the land really fertile. And then for hundreds of years, prairie plants grew in Illinois. And as they died and decomposed, they put a lot of nutrients into the soil. Now, in Illinois, we have a lot of soil called drummer soil. And drummer soil is actually our state soil. And it's really fertile and dark and full of nutrients. And it's really good for growing crops in. And we're really lucky here in our state too, because our topsoil, which is the very, very top layer of soil, it's about a foot deep, which is a little deeper than usual. And that's the layer that we're planting our crops in. So we have a really good, fertile base of soil to plant our crops. Now, Illinois is also near a lot of water sources. We have the Great Lakes, the Mississippi River, and the Illinois River. And these water sources are really good for us to be able to transport our agriculture goods and crops and produce by barges and boats. Now, we're in the central part of the United States. So we have a lot of interstates and railroads that run through Illinois, and that helps also with transportation by semi-trucks and freight trains and things like that. Now, Illinois is about 400 miles from the top to the bottom. So we kind of have a diverse growing climate, which means we can grow a bunch of different kinds of crops. So our northern half is generally a little cooler than our southern half. So we're able to grow more varieties of crops. Now, 75% of Illinois is farmland, and we have about 27 million acres of farmland. So this is just a quick look at some of the specialty crops that we grow here. This is definitely not all of them, but I wanted to give you a good sampling so you can see kind of the different things that we grow. So we have a lot of fruits like apples and peaches and berries. We grow vegetables like lettuce and potatoes and carrots, but then we'll also grow other things like herbs like dill and oregano. And Illinois actually ranks third in the United States for having farmers markets. So we have a lot of farmers markets here in DuPage County, especially from the spring until the fall. So if you're ever out with your parents at a farmers market, go up to one of the specialty crop growers and just find out how they grow their crops and where they're from, and you might learn something new. Now, there are some things that we can't grow in Illinois. We don't have a good climate for growing tropical fruit. So I have the example for you of a banana today. So I want to go through the steps so that you can see how a product gets here in Illinois when it's grown somewhere completely different. So a lot of the tropical fruits like bananas need a really warm climate to grow. So we can't grow them here in our state. So the first step is the bananas. They're fruit and they grow on trees. So the first step is they actually need to grow. Then when they're ready, they are harvested. So once they're harvested, then they have to be packaged. And this packaging is getting them ready to be shipped. So then they are shipped by things like semi-trucks or trains to their next destination, which is the grocery store. And so at the grocery store, that's where you and I can go and buy them. And then our last step is we actually bring them home. So this is the process of how items get to us from the farms. So it's very similar to how crops here in Illinois would get to us, but they are just coming a much farther distance. Now in Illinois, we have a couple of top crops, and these are not considered specialty crops, but I wanted to mention them because we grow these the most. So we rank second in the nation for growing field corn. And if you watched our field corn video, you know all about field corn. This is the corn that's used for things like animal feed and ethanol and starch, sweetener, and oil that are then made into a bunch of household products. We also rank first in soybean production, and soybeans, similar to corn, are used for a lot of different things. They're also used for animal feed, biodiesel, which is a fuel, and then in industrial products that are in our homes as well. So those are the top Illinois crops, but what we really want to focus on today are Illinois specialty crops. Now, a couple of these are going to be review, but they are so important that we needed to go ahead and put them back in. So the first one is pumpkins. Now, if you watched our pumpkin lesson, I want you to pause this video right now and to say 3 things that you remember about pumpkins. So go ahead and pause your video right now. Now, Illinois is the #1 grower of pumpkins in the United States. Morton, Illinois, you can see it marked on the map there. It's considered the pumpkin capital of the world. Between 90 and 95% of the pumpkins that are used for processing or canning are actually grown there. Now, pumpkins are a member of the gourd family. So they're related to things like cucumbers and melons and zucchinis. And they are also considered a fruit. Now, the reason they're considered a fruit is because they come from the flower of a plant and they have seeds. So they're a fruit just like how we would categorize a tomato as a fruit. So pumpkins have both male and female flowers. And so in order for a pumpkin to grow, pollen from the male flower has to be moved to the female flower. And pumpkins rely on insects to pollinate them. So you can see in this picture here, this is a picture of a female flower, and that little ball right down at the end of the flower, that's actually what's going to turn into the pumpkin when the flower is pollinated. And it will grow into a great big pumpkin. Now, pumpkins come in all different varieties, and a variety just is a fancy word for a type. So pumpkins are usually used for processing or canning, so those are the kinds that we eat. They can be used for carving, like jack-o'-lanterns, and then we have our decorative pumpkins that are all different colors and are really pretty. So that's a little overview of pumpkins. Our next topic is horseradish. Now, this is a new one for everyone. We haven't covered this yet, but horseradish is really important to Illinois. We are the #1 grower of horseradish in the United States, and we produce about 85% of the entire world's horseradish. So Collinsville, Illinois, you can see it marked on the map. It's down by St. Louis, and it's considered the horseradish capital of the world. So horseradish is a root crop, and it grows under the ground, kind of like a carrot does. And you may have seen horseradish used as a condiment or as like a sauce that you'd put on other types of food, and it's pretty spicy. So it's planted and harvested by hand. There aren't special machines for harvesting horseradish. Some farmers will maybe adapt potato harvesting equipment, but there's not a specific way to harvest horseradish besides by hand. Now, horseradish is a perennial crop, and perennial means that it comes back year after year after year. So you don't have to replant the horseradish. And the horseradish that is in Illinois was brought here by German immigrants when they came over in the 1800s, and it's been growing there ever since. Now, horseradish is harvested in the fall, and then it's sold and processed. into the condiment that we use, or you can buy it whole. Okay, so our next one is popcorn. So just like before, if you watched our corn lesson, I want you to push pause right now and say 3 things that you remember about popcorn. Now in Illinois, we rank 3rd in popcorn production. We have about 115 popcorn farms here. So you can see on the map, a lot of the popcorn is grown in Mason County, which is in central Illinois. So they are the leading popcorn growing county. And popcorn is Illinois' state snack. It's harvested in the fall and planted in the spring, and it's full of starch, but there is some moisture inside. So when you heat up your popcorn kernels, the heat will expand that moisture, and then when the pressure builds up, it will pop the kernel inside out and pop that starch onto the outside. And that is how we get our popcorn snack. Okay, next we have peaches. Now, peaches grow better in warmer climates. They mostly grow in central and southern Illinois. It's really too cold up here where we live to grow peaches. In Illinois, we have 278 peach farms, and that covers about 1,472 acres. And if we remember, the acre is about the size of what? A football field. All right, so peaches are kind of similar to apples in the way that they are cared for. So peaches are grown in orchards, and it takes 2 to 4 years for a peach tree, a new peach tree, to produce fruit. So they are usually planted in the late spring or in the late winter or early spring when it's still cold. And then it takes 2 to 4 years for those trees to start producing fruit. Now, the way they produce fruit, they start off as a bud or a flower, and those flowers have to be pollinated, and they rely on insects for that. And once the flowers are pollinated, they'll start growing into peaches. Now, peaches, just like a lot of our other crops, they come in different varieties. So they will have peaches that will have different colors, or maybe they'll be more firm or more soft or more sweet. And so farmers will choose which varieties they want to grow. Now, there are 2 varieties I want to touch on with you, and they're more like categories, really. But these are kind of important because farmers will choose to grow one more so than the other. So the 2 terms that I have for you are clingstone and freestone. Now you can see in my last picture here, this is the inside of a peach. Now peaches don't have a bunch of different seeds on the inside. They only have one seed, and that's called the pit. Now the 2 types of peaches are clingstone and freestone. So clingstone, kind of like its name, that pit is clinging to the inside, and it's really hard to get the pit outside of the peach. Now freestone, they come off freely, so it's a lot easier to get the pit out of the peach. So a lot of places will grow freestone varieties of peaches because we as consumers like them because they're easier to get the pit out of the peach. All right, I have a couple bonus specialty crops for you. The first one is strawberries. Now, strawberries are the only fruit that has its seeds on the outside, and there's about 173 strawberry farms here in Illinois. Now, just like other crops, strawberries come in a bunch of different varieties. So some may be bigger, smaller, more sweet, more tart. And so strawberry plants are planted in the spring, usually in April. But it's important that they're planted after the threat of frost is over. Strawberries don't do well in the cold, and so it's important that they're not planted too early or they could get frost damage. Now these plants will last about 2 to 5 years. That's how long they will produce fruit before they need to be replaced. Something kind of fun is we actually cover strawberries in straw to help protect them from the weather when it starts getting colder. Now, strawberries have this cool thing called a runner. And runners are part of the plant that are offshoots, and they'll actually start putting out roots and develop into a whole new plant. So when you see a row of strawberries in a field, those individual plants have put out runners, and those runners have filled in that whole row. All right, so another way that strawberries can be grown is in high tunnels. You may look at this and think it's a greenhouse, but it's actually a high tunnel, and it's a little bit different. So high tunnels don't have electricity or fans or anything. They are relying on the sun to heat, and then most of the crops are grown in the ground usually. So you can see that these strawberries, they are growing kind of on a lumpy row, right? So a machine has gone through and actually piled up the soil, and then that soil has been covered in plastic. And then the farmer will go through and poke holes in the plastic and plant one strawberry plant per hole. Now these strawberry plants have to be replaced every single year, but the high tunnels actually help with pest control and climate control and things like that. So it's another way that plants can be grown. All right, and so our last specialty crop I have for you is lettuce. Now, we don't grow a ton of lettuce here in Illinois, but I picked this specialty crop because we have a lettuce grower here in DuPage County that we actually got to tour their greenhouse, and they grow their lettuce in a really cool way that you may not have heard of. So lettuce is grown all over the world, and it's actually the second most popular vegetable behind potatoes. The average person will eat about 25 pounds of lettuce a year, and you've probably heard of some of the common varieties of lettuce like romaine and iceberg and butter lettuce. Now, like I said, we don't grow a lot of lettuce here. Mostly our lettuce is grown in California or Arizona because they have really good growing climates for lettuce down there. So our greenhouse that we are going to visit, they grow their lettuce using a system called hydroponics. Now, hydroponics means that we're growing the plants without soil. We're actually growing them in water. And just like soil has nutrients that plants need, we have to put nutrients into the water. So nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium. And those nutrients are pumped through the water along with oxygen, and the plants will actually grow their roots in the water. So this is a really efficient way to do it because when you grow in a greenhouse, you can grow throughout the whole year and you don't have to worry about the weather. So let's take a look at this quick video I have to see how Fishy Green Organic Farm grows their lettuce hydroponically. All right, so that is all I have for you today. I hope you had fun looking at a bunch of different specialty crops and learning how they are grown and cared for. So we will see you next time, and have a good day.